A grand silence hangs in the twilight air. Inside an abandoned castle on Long Island's Gold Coast, dust dances in beams of fading light. Floorboards, once polished to a gleam, now lie warped and broken. Walls that echoed with music and laughter are scarred by graffiti and soot. Rainwater drips through gaping holes in a slate roof, pooling on a marble floor gone dull with neglect. This is Oheka Castle, or what remains of it. In these empty halls, time stands still. A century ago, they were alive with opulence. Now, only ghosts of the past wander here. It is the final look at a dream collapsing into ruin. In the courtyard, weeds push through cracked stones where luxury cars once parked. Glass crunches underfoot from shattered windows that stare vacantly like hollow eyes. There is no electricity, no warmth. The estate has neither plumbing nor power. Stripped of its fine furnishings and left exposed to the elements, a once manicured garden beyond the broken doors has turned wild, its fountains dry and statues streaked with moss. The grandeur of a forgotten palace is still faintly visible in the elegant lines of the architecture and the whisper of a French garden design, but it is buried under decay. The scene is hauntingly beautiful and terribly sad, a monument to faded glory. A lone figure stands in the great hall, taking in the melancholy sight. They imagine the chandeliers lit and sparkling, the music of a bygone orchestra filling the air. For a moment, through the mind's eye, the castle is alive again. Gentlemen in black tie and ladies in silk drift through the ballroom, and the scent of roses wafts in from formal gardens. But in an eye blink, the vision is gone. Only silence remains. This castle holds its breath, caught between memory and oblivion. Every step the visitor takes reverberates in the emptiness. The grand staircase stands firm, its wrought iron railing cold to the touch. Otto Hermann Kahn, the man who built this place, insisted it be made of steel and concrete, fireproof and unyielding. That construction saved Oheka from destruction. Vandals have tried to burn it down over 100 times, yet each time the flames died out against the stubborn concrete walls, the castle itself refuses to vanish. It stands defiant, a ghost of the Gilded Age refusing to surrender to time or flame. The doorway gapes open to the elements. As the last light of day filters through shattered glass, it illuminates a scene of elegant ruin, a crumbling castle awaiting either final collapse or a miracle of rebirth. How did it come to this? What fate befell this magnificent estate that it should end up in such darkness and desolation? The answer lies back in time, in an age of ambition and excess. To understand Oheka Castle's tragic fate, we must first return to its very beginning, to the dreams of the man who built it. The outsider. Before there was a castle, there was a man who didn't belong. At the turn of the 20th century, New York City glittered with wealth. Skyscrapers climbing higher every year, fortunes built on railroads, steel, and oil. To be rich was to be powerful, and to be powerful was to be seen. Yet among those men of money and marble mansions, there were still gates that could not be opened. Otto Hermann Kahn knew this all too well. He was a German-born banker who came to America chasing possibility, a man of precision, intellect, and taste. He dressed impeccably, spoke with eloquence, and donated millions to the arts. He could buy anything he wanted, except acceptance. In the eyes of New York's old aristocracy, he was something they could never overlook, an outsider. He was Jewish, an immigrant, a new man in a world ruled by names that had been rich for generations. They let him into their boardrooms, but not their country clubs. They admired his money, but whispered about his bloodline. And though he smiled through it, Otto Khan never forgot the humiliation. In 1905, fate dealt him a cruel reminder of how fragile belonging could be. His beloved estate in New Jersey, Cedar Court, burned to the ground. The fire devoured everything: art, furniture, memories, even his favorite violin. In the aftermath, reporters said the banker's mansion had gone up in smoke. But to Khan, it was more than that. It was as if the world had stripped him bare twice over. So he made himself a promise. He would build something the world couldn't ignore. Something grand enough that it wouldn't just demand acceptance, it would command respect. A place that couldn't be denied, destroyed, or dismissed. He would build his own kingdom on his own terms, and this time, not even fire would take it away. The idea began to form in his mind, like a spark catching wind. He wanted height, a place that stood above everyone else, literally and symbolically. He wanted permanence, a monument that would outlive prejudice. And he wanted beauty, a masterpiece worthy of the art and culture he loved so deeply. So Otto Khan went searching, not for society's approval, but for land. He found it on the north shore of Long Island, a gentle hill overlooking Cold Spring Harbor. But Khan didn't want a hill. He wanted a summit. So he ordered men to move earth until the land itself rose higher, until he had his mountain on the edge of the sea. From that elevated ground, he looked out across the Gold Coast, where America's richest men built their summer palaces, and he whispered to himself, "Now, they'll have to look up." The rise of Otto Khan. Our story begins not with a castle, but with a man of extraordinary vision and drive, Otto Hermann Kahn. Born in 1867 in Germany, Otto Kahn rose from modest origins to become one of the most powerful financiers in America. By the early 20th century, he was a partner at Kuhn, Loeb and Company, helping to reorganize railroads and amassing a vast fortune. He was known for his impeccable style and for his generosity in the arts. Some even called him King of New York. But Otto Kahn's ascent to prominence was not without challenges. He was Jewish in an era when high society clubs and establishments in America often barred men of his faith. Despite his wealth and status, Kahn faced discrimination. At his country residence in Morristown, New Jersey, he was famously refused entry to the local country club solely because of his ancestry. This personal snub wounded him deeply, but also ignited a spark of resolve. If the old money aristocracy wouldn't have him, he would create a world of his own grand enough to eclipse theirs. Around the same time, tragedy struck another blow. Kahn's first country estate, Cedar Court, went up in flames in 1905, a devastating fire that reduced his home and cherished art collection to ashes. Two painful experiences, social exclusion and a house lost to fire, planted the seeds of a grand vision in Otto Kahn's mind. Kahn was a man of restless ambition. His family motto was, "Ever restlessly forward," and he lived by it. Determined not to be deterred by prejudice or misfortune, he decided to build something that would stand as an undeniable symbol of his success and refinement. If others could have their clubs and mansions, he would have something greater, a private castle, a paradise of his own design. In 1914, as Europe teetered on the brink of war and America danced toward the Jazz Age, Otto Kahn purchased 443 acres of prime land on Long Island's North Shore, in a hamlet called West Hills. This area was known as the Gold Coast, a stretch where America's richest families maintained lavish estates. Here, Khan would etch his legacy into the landscape. The location Khan chose was strategic and poetic. The land sat at the highest point on Long Island, a hilltop with sweeping views of Cold Spring Harbor and the rolling hills beyond. In fact, the hill itself did not exist until Khan ordered it made. Workers toiled for 2 years piling earth to elevate the ground, just so his future mansion could overlook the world around it. This would not just be a home, it would be a statement. From this man-made promontory would rise a palatial residence to rival the grand chateau of Europe. He hired the renowned architectural firm of Delano and Aldrich to create his palace. No expense would be spared. Khan insisted on one crucial feature above all: the castle must be fireproof. Never again would he watch his home burn down. Thus, the plans called for a structure of steel, concrete, and stone, one of the first totally fireproof residential buildings ever built. Floors, walls, beams, all reinforced so that Oheka Castle might defy even the flames of disaster. Khan envisioned gardens as splendid as those of Versailles. He brought in the Olmsted brothers, sons of Frederick Law Olmsted, to lay out the grounds. The landscape would include terraced lawns reflecting pools, orchards, woodlands, and an avenue of trees lining the approach. There would be a private golf course, one of the largest greenhouses in America, stables, tennis courts, an indoor swimming pool, even a landing strip for airplanes. Otto Khan's dream was not just a mansion, but a self-contained world of luxury and leisure. The house would be a French-style chateau of golden sandstone, with grand turrets and steep rooflines piercing the sky. It would have sprawling wings, courtyards, and gardens tumbling down the hill in symmetrical perfection. In Khan's vision, this estate would be a place where art and music flourished, where the most influential people of the age would gather under his hospitable roof. He had not only matched the old elite, but surpassed them. The gilded dream of Oheka was set in motion. Fireproof dreams. When Otto Khan broke ground in 1917, it wasn't just construction, it was catharsis. The roar of machinery, the clanging of steel, the smell of wet concrete. All of it was a kind of therapy for a man determined to defy the past. He walked the site daily, his shoes sinking into the churned earth, his coat fluttering in the wind as he watched his vision take shape. He told his architects one thing above all else: this home will never burn. The blueprints reflected that obsession. Every wall would be concrete, every beam steel. Even the library, the warm heart of the house, would be built with plaster painted to look like wood, so no fire could ever touch it. The house would not just stand against time, it would stand against tragedy itself. Workers laid the foundations deeper than any mansion before it, pouring hundreds of tons of concrete into the Long Island soil. The sound of hammers and drills filled the air for years. Steam engines brought materials from New York City. On some days, the hilltop looked more like an industrial site than a future palace. But in Otto Khan's mind, he could already see it. A French chateau rising out of the earth like a dream turned solid. Tall windows gleaming under the morning sun, terraced gardens stepping down toward the horizon. A private paradise, born not from privilege, but from will. He spared no expense. Every stone imported, every corridor meticulously planned. This wasn't a home for one lifetime. It was an heirloom to eternity. A statement carved into the skyline that the outsider had arrived. 5 years later, the last scaffold came down. From the highest terrace, Otto Kahn looked out at his creation, a golden palace crowned in slate and steel. His reflection shimmered in the still water of the reflecting pools below. He had built a fortress not of wealth, but of resilience. Fireproof, faith-proof, foolproof. This was more than architecture. It was revenge made beautiful. The Gilded Dream construction began in 1917. Caravans of workers and artisans arrived at the West Hills property. Stonemasons, carpenters, and steelworkers swarmed the site from dawn till dusk. Overseeing them were architects William Delano and Chester Aldrich, translating Kahn's lavish ideas into brick and mortar reality. Piece by piece, the castle took shape atop the specially built hill. The chateau emerged with 127 rooms, sprawling over 109,000 square feet, making it the second largest private home in America. Every aspect reflected Kahn's insistence on quality and permanence. Where others might use wood, Kahn used concrete and stone. This was a house built for the ages. He poured a fortune into the project, about $11 million at the time, equivalent to over $150 million today. But he was determined that his dream castle would not meet the fate of Cedar Court. By 1919, after 5 years of ceaseless construction, Oheka Castle was complete. It stood as a masterpiece of the Gold Coast, hailed by newspapers as the finest country house in America. On its maiden day, the castle's stone towers cast long shadows over the impeccable lawns. The Kahn family, Otto, his wife Adelaide, and their 4 children, moved in awe of its scale and beauty. They christened it Oheka, an acronym formed from Otto's own name. As one approached through the grand iron gates, the monogram Oheka gleamed like a royal crest. For Otto Kahn, this was more than just a home. It was the tangible fulfillment of his gilded dream. In the first summers at Oheka, Otto Kahn would stroll through the gardens at dusk, satisfied smiles playing on his lips. Here was the view he had engineered into existence, the highest point on Long Island, giving him sunsets that seemed to linger just a moment longer for his pleasure. The castle's limestone walls glowed golden in that evening light. He had built his own palace to rival the noblest estates of Europe. No country club could deny him now. He had created a club of one, where the only members were those he invited into his own realm. The castle takes shape. As soon as the paint was dry, Otto Kahn began filling his home with the best of everything. He and Addie imported fine European furniture, tapestries, and artworks. The castle's formidable exterior gave way to interiors of comfort and charm. Kahn was especially proud of a secret passage built into a bookcase that led to a private office, a whimsical feature that delighted visitors. Every corner reflected thoughtful design and personal flair. With the estate fully operational, a small army of staff kept it running seamlessly. 126 full-time servants maintained the castle and grounds. Butlers, footmen, maids, chefs, gardeners, grooms, chauffeurs, and guards, all moving in a rhythm of precision. The estate was alive with motion, day and night. It was a world that appeared effortless, the mark of true luxury. Then came the guests. Otto Kahn was a consummate host who relished bringing interesting people together under his roof. During the Gilded Age of the 1920s, Oheka Castle became a social hub where royalty, heads of state, business magnates, and Hollywood stars mingled amidst extravagant entertainments. He often had string quartets in one room and jazz bands in another. The likes of Charlie Chaplin, Enrico Caruso, and George Gershwin were rumored guests. The ballroom saw opulent costume balls. The dining hall hosted feasts on gold-trimmed china. No guest left Oheka unimpressed. In June 1920, Otto Kahn's daughter Maud was married at the castle. The wedding filled the estate with joy. For Otto Kahn, seeing his daughter marry amid the grandeur of the home he built must have been a proud and emotional moment. The castle was the backdrop of his family's memories. In those golden days, Oheka Castle was not forgotten at all. It was the center of attention and the height of luxury. But outside the estate's gates, the world was changing fast. The stock market was soaring toward an infamous crash. The opulence of Oheka's parties would not last forever. Soon, fate and history would intervene. The Golden Age. At its zenith in the mid-1920s, Oheka Castle was a golden paradise. Sunlight flooded its terraces. The smell of cut grass and roses filled the air. Inside, Otto Kahn might be found in his favorite spot, the music room, listening to private recitals by world-class musicians. He entertained people not just for their titles, but for their talent and wit. Oheka became a crossroads of culture and power, and Otto Kahn was the genial conductor orchestrating it all. As night fell, the castle transformed. Hundreds of lights glowed across its facade. Guests in evening dress strolled the terraces, marveling at the reflection of the moon in the long pools below. Within Oheka's orbit, life was a celebration of art, beauty, and indulgence. But in 1929, the Roaring Twenties ended with the crash of the stock market. The Great Depression set in. Even men like Otto Kahn felt its strain. The lavish parties became fewer. Kahn aged, his health weakened. In March 1934, Otto Hermann Kahn died of a heart attack. He was 67 years old. In that moment, Oheka lost its master. The king of this castle was gone. Kahn's death marked the close of Oheka's golden age. The castle had shone like a beacon through the Jazz Age, but now its future was uncertain. No longer the scene of high society revels, it risked becoming a gilded relic of memories. The world outside was marching on. The Depression deepened. War loomed once more in Europe. The castle that once symbolized triumph now seemed a burden in a changing time. The stage was set for Oheka's next chapter, one of decline and trials. The fall of the banker king. After Otto Kahn's death, the castle carried on quietly under his widow Addie and a reduced staff. But times had changed. Maintaining a 127-room palace was an immense financial drain. By 1939, the family could no longer afford it. Addie Kahn sold the estate to the welfare fund of the New York sanitation workers. The palace of a banker king became a retirement home for garbage collectors and street sweepers. For 3 years, Oheka, renamed Sanita, served as a convalescent home for the city's sanitation employees. It was a strange twist of fate. The Castle of Kings turned shelter for the working class. With the onset of World War II, the U.S. Merchant Marine took over the estate to train radio operators. The ornate rooms became classrooms and barracks. Grand halls echoed with Morse code instead of music. By the mid-1940s, the estate had already been broken up. The vast 443 acres shrank to a fraction of its size. In 1948, Oheka became a boarding school, the Eastern Military Academy. For 3 decades, the castle housed young cadets. But to make it functional, its beauty was sacrificed. The gardens were bulldozed, the grand rooms subdivided. By the late 1970s, the school was bankrupt and closed. The cadets left. The castle stood empty again. Decay and darkness. With the closing of the academy in 1979, Oheka entered its darkest years. The grand rooms that once housed laughter were now cold and barren. Paint peeled, rain seeped through ceilings, and vandals roamed. Over the next few years, more than 100 fires were set inside its walls, yet the structure refused to burn. Otto Kahn's fireproof design saved it again and again. The castle stood scarred, but standing. By the early 1980s, Oheka was nearly in ruins. Graffiti covered the walls. Gardens turned to wilderness. Locals called it haunted. It seemed destined for demolition, but the community fought to save it. They searched for someone, anyone, who could rescue the castle. In 1984, that person arrived. A developer named Gary Melius purchased Oheka Castle, seeing potential where others saw wreckage. The castle had no utilities, no windows, no doors. Yet Melius began what would become the largest private residential restoration in American history. Out of decay, Oheka was about to rise again. Restoration and return. Gary Melius bought Oheka in 1984 for $1.5 million. It was a little more than a shell. Over the next years, he spent millions restoring it. He replaced the roof with slate from the same quarry used in Kahn's time. He installed over 200 new windows and doors. The grand staircase's ironwork was repaired and reinstalled. Every room was cleaned, replastered, and brought back to life. The gardens were recreated from old plans. Pools were rebuilt, fountains reinstalled, thousands of trees and hedges replanted. By the late 1980s, the castle was weather-tight and glowing again. Melius faced financial challenges and sold the property briefly, but eventually reacquired it. Restoration continued through the 1990s and 2000s, transforming Oheka into a shining landmark once more. After decades and about $40 million of work, Oheka Castle was reborn. It became a luxury hotel, event venue, and historic site. Weddings returned, echoing the joy once felt there. The castle joined the National Register of Historic Places. America's forgotten palace had been resurrected. The legacy today, Oheka Castle stands resplendent once more, a living relic of America's Gilded Age. Its story endures as a testament to ambition, resilience, and the passage of time walking through its halls now. One can sense the layers of history within its walls. Oheka's revival brought it back into popular culture. It appears in films, music, videos, and series. Its grandeur inspired F. Scott Fitzgerald's vision of Gatsby's mansion, and even represented Xanadu in Citizen Kane. Every year, thousands visit to hear its story, to see the grand staircase, and to walk through gardens that once lay in ruin. Yet, Oheka's journey isn't without shadows. In 2014, Gary Melius was shot in the head by a masked gunman in the castle's parking lot, but survived. Financial troubles have followed, with ongoing efforts to keep the estate alive. Even today, its survival remains a delicate balance of passion and preservation. Oheka Castle is more than the sum of its parts. It is a living entity that demands care. From Otto Kahn to Gary Melius, it has required visionaries to protect it. Its legacy is both a triumph and a warning that greatness always comes at a price. As the sun sets and lights flicker on, Oheka's silhouette glows against the twilight sky. Admiration, melancholy, and hope mix in equal measure. The tragic story of America's forgotten palace has become one of rediscovery and resilience. History rises and falls, yet beauty endures. Oheka stands as proof that dreams can crumble, but with love and determination, they can also be rebuilt. America's once forgotten palace is forgotten no longer. It lives on, an immortal emblem of an age long past, and a beacon of hope that even in loss, something beautiful can be found again.